Scripture reading this morning is going to be 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. Starting in verse 16. Therefore we do not lose heart, but though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day. For momentarily, light affliction is producing for us all eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Please be seated.
I'd like for you to imagine just for a minute that you're out on a walk this afternoon and you come upon a construction site. You don't remember seeing this construction site before. It looks like it's in its early stages. You do, however, see a couple of guys laying some bricks down as kind of the foundation of whatever they're building. It's unclear what they're constructing. So you decide to take a little bit of a breather from your walk on this sunny afternoon and walk over and ask maybe what the first guy that you see, what's he building? What's this construction worker doing? So you go up and say, hey man, what's going on here? What are you doing? He wipes his forehead, kind of seems a little grumpy, honestly. Says, hey look man, I'm just laying bricks. I don't like it that much. It's a job, pays the bills. That's about all it is. You say, oh, okay, have fun, good. Keep on going on your walk. You walk a little bit further, see a second guy also laying bricks. So you say, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm actually building a wall. It's gonna be part of a new school. It's decent work and I wanna do it right, especially so I don't get fired. Oh, interesting, so school's going up, so we have a little bit more information here. Great. So then finally, you walk a little bit further onto where you see the third man working, and he's setting each brick with absolute precision. It's using the tools, making sure each one is exactly in the place as it should be. He steps back and occasionally admires his progress. Unlike the others, this guy has a sparkle in his eye and is grinning with satisfaction as he works. I mean, this is the bricklayer of bricklayers. This is the guy who knows bricklaying. What are you doing, you ask? With a smile, the third worker looks up and joyfully replies, I'm building a place that will change lives. Someday, kids will come here to learn, to grow, to become leaders. I'm not just laying bricks, I'm shaping the future. 3 men, 3 perspectives. Let's think about these 3 men in this very simple story. The first man is like somebody who is focused on the here and now, just surviving, just existing. It's just bricklaying to pay the bills, nothing special. The second worker sees some limited purpose, I think, in his work, but still focuses mainly on the short term. He knows it's a wall for a school, not a lot beyond that. Doesn't really see the big picture. The third worker, though, understands that everything we do should be animated and shaped by a long-term perspective. He knows that he's building a place, right, that will change lives and shape lives in the future. This morning, it's that third worker's perspective that I'd really like for us to dig into and think about. I will say up front, I like reading. I read a lot of business leadership books and just a lot of kind of general books about self-improvement, that sort of thing. That's actually what triggered my sermon topic this morning. There's a book many of you have read. I'm sure I read it years ago myself, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit number 2, having a clear vision of where you want to go before you start something. I would imagine a lot of you guys are familiar already with that principle. And then more recently, last year I read a book called How Big Things Get Done, written in 2023 by a couple of guys. That book says that most major projects are best tackled by working backwards from the end. The book talks about thinking of a timeline and starting with the right side of that timeline, where you're going, and then working in steps backwards to figure out how to best tackle a project. I don't mean to diminish life down to a project or project management or even business literature. That's not my purpose here this morning. I only offer those two books to say it sparked an idea in me that if the business world understands these principles, then might we transfer some of that over to think of our spiritual lives as well. Of course, as Christians, we are called to have a long-term perspective. And of course, it's actually a really super long perspective that's forever, right? It's actually eternity. So let's go ahead and call that an eternal perspective. That's what I'd like for us to focus on a few minutes this morning and dig into that over the next few minutes. There are three things that we'll consider here, pretty simple. I have intentionally designed this to hopefully appeal to all ages. If you're younger, if you're older, if you don't know a lot about the Bible, or if you know a lot about the Bible, I hope that anybody here can get something out of this morning. The first simple question is, what is an eternal perspective? The second question is simply, how can we make daily decisions based on that eternal perspective? And then third, why does an eternal perspective matter? That's our game plan. It's pretty easy, and I'm excited to dig into this with you this morning. What is an eternal perspective? We're simply defining this as viewing daily life through the lens of eternity. Let's think about this just for a second. That word lens. Think of a lens, right? A lens changes the way that we see something. It changes a perspective. It changes a perspective of something that is definitely there, and it's definitely real, but we just maybe don't perceive it as it actually is. Think about maybe most commonly contact lenses. I'm wearing contacts right now. I see a lot of people here this morning are wearing glasses. Those lenses change your perspective on something, right? A telescope, binoculars, what else? A microscope, or even your smartphone has lenses for the different cameras on your smartphone. Lenses are all around us, and they are super, super useful for changing perspective, helping us see something that we might not otherwise see. Let's unpack this a little bit further. What is an eternal perspective? What does this really mean for a Christian? First, I would say acknowledging what's temporary. This means understanding that life here, worldly success or failure, health or illness, wealth or poverty, comfort or pain, all of those things are fleeting. We deal with a lot of very hard things here on earth, and maybe we're blessed also to have some incredibly good times here on earth. I think of Job, right? That Job was richly blessed, had so many material blessings that were taken away from him, highs and lows. Scott, this morning, around the table before communion, shared such eloquent thoughts and did such a nice job of teeing up the Lord's Supper this morning. I got a little nervous because he started talking about Paul in 2 Corinthians. Those are the passages I'm going to talk about right now, too. Thankfully, Scott, I think we dovetailed very nicely together. I don't think there was too much overlap there. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning in verse 24, Paul really endured hard things during his life, but still characterized all these challenges momentary. Beginning in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 24, 5 times I received at the hands of the Jews, and 40 lashes less 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods, once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked, a day and a night I was adrift at sea. On frequent journeys and dangers from river, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers, and toil and hardship through many a sleepless night, and hunger and thirst, often without food, and cold and exposure. And, apart from the other things, there is the daily pressure of my anxiety for all the churches. Whew. I'm literally out of breath just trying to read that run-on sentence with all of the things that Paul had to deal with during his ministry. Turn back a few pages, same letter to the Christians in Corinth, 2 Corinthians, 4th chapter, beginning in verse 16 there. So this is Paul talking as well, right? In light of all those things that we just said, he said, so we do not lose heart, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen here, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, temporary, but the things that are unseen are eternal, permanent, long-lasting. What is an eternal perspective? Also, prioritizing what matters. This means embracing things with eternal significance rather than satisfying the urge to cave into that short-term self-gratification, short-term gratification. We live in a society that bombards us with things that don't really matter in the long run. We're led to believe that these things are really important and really valuable, when in fact we know that they're not. Let me list just a few things. I also would acknowledge here, I chose this sermon topic because I needed it myself. I think that I don't personally always do a great job of keeping an eternal perspective, and I so frequently cave into this temptation of thinking about things that are temporary, inconsequential, short-term in their nature. Mindlessly scrolling on my phone for hours at a time. Some people, maybe we call this doom scrolling. High school students are doom scrolling. We're familiar with this term. Word of the year last year, according to Oxford Dictionary, was brain rot. We know what brain rot means. A few of us, it's kind of like a slang word. It's because all of this social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of these apps are going through rotting our brains, right? And it doesn't accomplish anything good. It's temporary, it's worthless, it's pointless. I'm not here to advocate that you completely shut down all your social media. I just want to keep it in perspective that there is an eternal perspective that matters way, way, way more than what you're seeing on TikTok. Or choose your app. Maybe you're not a TikTok person. I'm not a TikTok. I'm way too old to have TikTok. Watching just one more episode of that TV show on Netflix that's so good right now. Feeling upset when my favorite sports team loses. This one hurt. I'm a Kentucky Wildcats fan. We lost to Arkansas last night. I went to bed, not quite crying, but really upset last night, realizing, wow, like eternal perspective probably just doesn't really matter that much. Filling my mind with worries about politics, clicking on one more news story, thinking about what clothes to wear this morning, what car to buy, what home to buy. Spending, this is a real one for me, countless hours thinking about work, worrying about work. Maybe some of those resonate with you too. That's a very personal list for me, and I hope that maybe it triggers a thought in you that you also spend time thinking about short-term things that just really don't matter when you have that eternal perspective. One more thing here. It's also really easy to do nothing. And granted, let me concede here. I think it is important to have rest, right? And to kind of turn your brain off occasionally and tune out all the noise. C.S. Lewis, Screwtape Letters, many of you are probably familiar with this already. Screwtape is a senior demon imparting advice and knowledge to his nephew, who is Wormwood. Screwtape, in one of the letters in the book, he says, "In doing nothing is very strong enough to steal away a man's best years, not in sweet sins, but in a dreary flickering of the mind over it knows not what and knows not why, in the gratification of curiosity so feeble that the man is only half aware of them, in drumming of fingers and kicking of heels, in whistling tunes that he does not like, or in the long, dim labyrinth of reveries that have not even lust or ambition to give them a relish, but which, once chance association has started them, the creature is too weak and fuddled to shake off." A lot of words there. What does that mean? There's real danger, not just in overt rebellion against God, but also in wasting one's life on trivial matters, empty thoughts, passive drifting. That is such an easy pattern to move into. What matters reveals where our heart is. Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 19. Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 19. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What's an eternal perspective? It's also living with hope. Living with hope. This means that as a follower of Christ, others are going to realize that I'm different. I'm different. I'm not going to be caught up in the temporary things that might ensnare others. Living with an eternal perspective will make me stand out. And let me tell you here, this is very, very difficult. Again, I'm speaking from my own experience here. Having that eternal perspective, emanating that hope to others, it's very difficult. But the differences make us stand out by design, right? Think about this with me just for a minute. The differences make us stand out by design, and this is a good thing. It's human nature that when we see something out of the ordinary, something that looks a little off, a little different, that we generally want to know why it is that way. It raises a question in our mind. Why is that thing unlike everything else that we know? This makes me think, of course, of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. This is a verse that gets quoted often. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. "And your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." I think that this concept of an eternal perspective makes us different, and it emanates hope so that people will see that in us and ask, what is the reason for the hope that is within you? And that is the door through which we can introduce Jesus and teach them the word. That is the evangelism hook, if you will, to really get in and talk to them about that they can also share in that eternal perspective, that this isn't something that is owned by me. This is something that is freely given by our Lord, open to all who would receive it. So, kind of second point here, how can we make daily decisions based on an eternal perspective? Everything I've said so far, it sounds great, but how do those things function practically? How do we actually make decisions today and tomorrow that reflect this eternal view or eternal perspective? Just as we said a minute ago, it's easy to get bogged down in the temporary, fall victim to the allure of the short term, and lose hope that there is actually something greater. So I believe that the answer to how, again, let me kind of concede here. I'm speaking now in the second point, really from my own personal experience and something that I have found to help me focus on that eternal perspective. I think the answer is committing to values. A value being simply a core belief or priority that shapes how we live and make decisions. A value is simply a core belief or priority that shapes how we live and make decisions. Granted, sometimes all this talk of perspective and values can feel a little bit squishy, a little bit nebulous. Theory is great, but since it's the how portion of the sermon, I'd like to get personal and make it super practical. Maybe give you something to take home with you here. So, in my marriage, Kara, beautiful wife, she's amazing. Before we even got married, met with a marriage counselor who had a lot of very good perspectives to share with us. One of the things that our counselor, I prefer the word coach, but counselor, coach, whatever, had us do was to sit down, each of us separately, with a deck of cards, and on each of those cards was listed a particular value. We sorted them into a few piles of not so important, moderately important, very important. And then Kara and I looked at our top 10, 15 cards and tried to look at what overlap we had between those decks of cards. This might sound a little bit weird, and honestly, at the time, I thought it was very weird, especially in premarital counseling. Why are we talking about values here? That has been super helpful, I would say, in my marriage with Kara, and I think Kara would agree that that exercise was very helpful. The three values that Kara and I agreed upon were service, growth, and authenticity. There have been a number of big decisions in our lives as a married couple where perhaps we don't know what to do and the right choice isn't always super clear. But having a few values that we can look back to and really think about how might we make this decision while living out these values that we share with one another, that's been really helpful. Quick example, a year and a half ago, Kara was in a job that was a good, very prestigious job, as a chemistry professor, and something felt very off. And we sat down together and also with our marriage coach to talk about that and decided that it would be best for Kara to walk away from that job. It was an opportunity to serve others. We have family members who are in need of caretaking, and so Kara was able to step into that role and take care of them. An opportunity to grow in a way that neither of us had really had an opportunity to grow in the past. And then authenticity. Certainly this was something that Kara was feeling pulled to do, that it was being true to herself and true to our marriage to step into the role of caretaking. And so I'm really, really proud of Kara. She's amazing, and I appreciate just how well these values have served us. Let me say, I think that as Christians, of course, we have a body of values, a body of shared values. I think for individuals and couples, there's a lot of benefit in really thinking about what are your core values and how do those shape decisions in your life. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get decisions and I really don't know what to do here. It doesn't seem like there's a good solution. I think this is one opportunity to really zone in on your values and use them to make decisions. By the way, if you're interested in kind of applying this, you can Google and find lists of values. You can even find decks of cards on Etsy or probably eBay or wherever. On Amazon, I'm sure, has some. But if you'd like more specific resources, I'd be happy to point you to those after services this morning. When you know your values, you're able to use them to make decisions that are consistent with an eternal perspective. So finally, why does an eternal perspective matter? It shapes our priorities and decisions as we work toward being in heaven with God for all eternity. As we've said this morning, having an eternal perspective changes our views on nearly everything here on earth. How we treat others, choices that we make at work and in our careers, how we spend our money, how we spend our time. All of these things are profoundly influenced by having an eternal perspective. Now, we have a few minutes left, and I also wanted to hit this point, that eternity is really long. And that's the biggest understatement of 2025 so far, right? It's incomprehensibly long. I talked about viewing things as kind of right to left on a timeline, right? That book that says how big things get done. You kind of envision a project, you start with the right, work your way towards the left, figure out what steps need to be done. I'd like to think of your life on a timeline, just for a minute. I actually have, me, I love a good visual aid. I have a rope here, and this rope, there's a little part here, it's a yellow rope, but part of it is black. You see the black there? Hopefully in the back, you can kind of see part of that rope has some tape on it. The black part of this rope, it represents your life. So this cutoff end, that's the day that you were born. You can probably see, right, first day of school, maybe you graduated, maybe you started driving a car, got married, so forth, right? And then the end of the black part of the rope here, that's the day that you die. And that's everybody in this room. We'll finally get to that part of the rope. So I don't know 6 inches? I don't know, 6 inches maybe, whatever. That's the duration of your life on this rope. Now, we know as Christians that when you die, you continue on, your soul continues on, right? Through eternity. I've asked my friend Jake to come up here and help me, because Jake is going to show you by walking down the center aisle with this, just how long, Jake should kind of, there you go. This is the first time I've used this rope, brand new, Amazon.com. There you go, Jake. Oh, that's it. Guys, think about this just for a minute. This little piece of black up here. You're doing a great job, Jake. You're doing a great job. Look how long. Jake, you're good. You don't have to untangle the whole thing. That might have us here until 6 o'clock tonight. This whole rope represents eternity. Now, again, I would draw your attention not to Jake. I promise you're good, Jake. You're good. Don't worry about it. This is your life, and look at how much more the yellow rope is still out in front of you. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. Now, hold it there, Jake, for a little bit longer, I promise. I'll let you go in a minute. Now, let's pretend that instead of the rope ending in this tangled mess that Jake is holding, that actually we cut a hole in the back of the building, and we go north to Dion's Pizza. Oh, man, Dion's Pizza is a good place, man. I see some fist pumps. Dion's Pizza. That's a really long rope. Think how long that rope would be to get all the way to Dion's Pizza. This is a 90-foot rope. I don't know how far it is to Dion's, but quarter mile, maybe, half a mile, I don't know. That's a really long rope. Then let's say we keep going beyond Dion's. We go up to Black Forest. We go up to Monument. We go up all the way to Denver. That's, I don't know that they make ropes that long. I mean, maybe power lines or something, but probably Amazon does not sell a rope that would go all the way to Denver from right here. We keep going. We keep going up I-25. We go to Cheyenne, Wyoming with this rope, this same rope. And remember, this black part, it doesn't get any longer. This is all you have still with this rope going all the way to Wyoming. Why stop at Cheyenne? Let's go all the way to Canada. So we go all the way up to Canada with this rope. That's a very long rope. We go to the North Pole. Hi, Santa. We make a pass and go back down the other side through Russia, through India, make it all the way back, and then finally, I don't want to interfere with our baptistry here. Maybe we come in through the side door, but the rope comes back in and comes back here, and it's still yellow, and you do it over and over and over and over again. Thank you, Jake. You can pull the rope back. That one loop around the earth, by the way, for numbers or science people here this morning, 24,860 miles. That's a lot more than the 90-foot rope here. That's a lot. That is, eternity is a lot. It is a long, long, incomprehensibly, unfathomably long time. It's more than our human minds can possibly grasp or ever begin to understand. So let's use that eternal perspective as the lens through which we see decisions today, tomorrow, the rest of this week. Anytime that we are so inclined, so tempted to get bogged down in the temporary, to start thinking about all the things we have going on at work, or that your sports team is out of the playoffs, think about that eternal perspective and think how it might shape your decisions, your priorities the rest of this week. Listen, I really appreciate you listening this morning. This has been a lot of fun to think through this with you. Like I said, this was so much for me. I hope that it's also been beneficial to you. I'd like to thank the elders this morning for the opportunity to stand up in front of you and preach. This is a really special opportunity. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you also to Kara, who helped me think through a lot of the concepts in my lesson this morning, did a lot of proofreading, and gave me a lot of ideas to chew on. I really appreciated her help with putting this lesson together. Just like the construction worker who understands that the daily grind of laying bricks is going to result in something meaningful and glorious, so too we as Christians are engaged in a short-term labor which will one day lead us into God's glorious presence. We use our eternal perspective as a lens through which we peer beyond the temporary and the mundane to something that is permanent and beautiful beyond all possible comprehension. The invitation this morning is very simple and very straightforward. It goes back to the concept of beginning with the end in mind, beginning with the end in mind. If you would like to spend eternity with God in heaven and use that as your end goal, to guide the rest of the decisions and your life here on earth, then we are more than happy and prepared to baptize you into Christ this morning. Our brother Rod will be more than happy to meet you up at the front of the building. If you have any needs, please come forward as we stand and sing.